Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Watercolor. Let's paint. Okay, so this is the next page of the Horses watercolor coloring book. As always, you want to have a place to mix your colors, a rag or a paper towel, something to dry off the brush with, spare or a scrap piece of paper on the side if needed. We may not need it for this one. And then I have 2 jars of water on the side, my brush, and I'll have all the information for all the supplies if you need them under the video, but anything that you have will work just fine. Now then, with this one, the way that we're going to paint it is, with watercolor in general, you don't want to paint over all the white areas. And if you're painting an object, you can always emphasize it by leaving more on the side, which actually gives it more of that watercolor kind of like loose feel. That's what we'll do with this one. By the way, any palette works. I'm just going to tell you the colors that I'm using, but you can use whatever you have. You don't have to use the exact same thing as me. So first we're just going to grab some brown straight out of the tube. And these colors that I have, they initially came from tubes, and then I just put them into this container. So I always tell people to use tube colors because they're usually more pigmented, they flow easier, there's less fillers in them, they're just easier to work with. The brand, that's kind of where you get into personal preference. I use Daniel Smith because it's my favorite brand, but you can honestly use anything, it'll be just fine. Like, the most important thing is the paper, really, and I use a pretty good quality paper. Okay, with this horse, it's kind of like the ones that has the spotted pattern, and that's what we'll paint in first. So it's just like a light brown flat wash directly, filling in these little spots to establish the pattern, or the markings, I should say. There's that one, there's one right here. There's this one. And this is just a straight flat wash. We're not trying to do any textures or shading. We're just kind of filling it in, almost like you're using a marker. You just want to get the base color filled in. There's one right here. And, you know, we're going to put one right here as well, even though I didn't draw one in on the print. And one over here on the face. That way it looks a little more dispersed throughout the whole body of the horse. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush. Next thing, I'll get some green. Whatever green you have in your palette is perfectly fine. And what we'll do is we'll put a concentration of the paint kind of here in the middle where the horse is, and then rinse your brush off and use that to pull out the color. Just kind of like that. And then rinse it off some more, maybe dry it a little bit. And if you rub it into the paper as you're pulling it out, you'll get that nice texture from the paper. Okay. Next thing, we need to mix the color of the jacket that the cowboy is wearing. And for that, we'll use the same brown that we have here, but we are also going to throw in a little bit of cobalt blue what that does is it dulls down the color a little bit more to an earthy, natural brown looking color. Which, let's see, that should be fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then same thing, we're just gonna go with a flat wash where you're just laying in the color so you know exactly where it is. And then we'll add all the shadow and textures later. So all of that right there. On the other side. Okay. And also the brush that I'm using, I really like it. It's a synthetic brush. But any brush is perfectly fine. It does not have to be one specific brush. Okay. Next, we will, for this one, I am going to just get just some straight black. If you don't have black, use brown and blue just to mix up whatever color you have, or you can even use orange and blue. They kind of neutralize each other. And I'm just gonna lay in a flat wash for the mane and the tail. Like that. Same thing for the mane. And just take your time. No reason to rush. Next, just gonna use the same color just to color in the hooves. Okay, rinse the brush. For the saddle, we're going to use a little bit of purple to mix in with the brown that we had already mixed. If you don't have that, you can always just use a little bit of red, a little bit of blue. That way we can differentiate it from the other brown parts that it's touching. We'll do that and that. And we can even mix in a little bit of that with the black for this one. For this part, it wasn't that much of a difference, but that's fine. That's not a focal point in the painting, so that's fine. And we are going to layer it in with shadows and other things. Okay, next thing, the boot that the cowboy is wearing. We got to let's throw in some teal here. Sometimes I just kind of make up the colors as I go along. Just what I think will look coherent with the rest of the painting. Okay. So that's basically a mixture of brown, blue, a little bit of purple, teal, I should say. Okay. Kind of teetering between the brown and the teal here. Okay. I think that's a good color. So we'll just use that for the boot. Also use that for the glove here. I'm gonna dry off my brush after rinsing it and then maybe pick up some of that color, make it a little lighter so we can separate it from the background. And honestly, I'm just going to use the same color here for the hair. There we go. And now I'm just going to grab some regular cobalt blue. And then color in the jeans, but not completely. I'm just going to kind of do one edge and then dry off my brush a little bit after rinsing it and pull off some of that color. There we go. That way it gives it a nice fading that looks like kind of like jeans. And I'm going to grab some of this purple brown, maybe mix it in with a little bit of this black here. Fill in the ears. There we go. And next we're going to get more brown, kind of mix it in with all of this. So we have to create the shadow part of the jacket. Okay. And put a little more of the cobalt blue, a little more brown. Okay, and then kind of layer that in like that. And that's the shadow layer. It shows a little bit of form. And we can use that in the creases of the jacket, a little bit underneath, definitely underneath the cowboy hat. Maybe a little bit in the indent there. And rinse the brush. And grab a little bit of the darker color that we mixed here for the boot. Actually, I'm just gonna throw some straight black in there because I need to darken it. There's too much water. Okay. Maybe I'll give some differentiation. Okay. I'm just gonna kind of mix these colors together. And then throw in the black. What I'm trying to do is create a color that I can just use on the different straps. So let's see, we'll do that here. There. Basically all the harness, all the parts of the harness, that's what we're using this color for. And just go slowly so that you're not like, messing up too much. I messed up a little bit. Okay. Okay. Oh, that looks good. You rinse the brush. Next thing, we'll use some of the phthalo blue, which is a much nicer, lighter blue. More like a sky blue, which is what we'll be using it for. A good mixture, a good amount of water. And we'll use that to weave it in around the horse. between the clouds is what I mean, around the horse on the outside. So we're going to go like this. We're just going to leave the clouds white. We're going to do it in sections. First we're doing this section. We're rinse off my brush, dry it off a little bit, and then just kind of pull out the color. We're going to do the same thing right here. Rinse off the brush, take off some of the moisture, and then just pull that out like that. Okay, and then we're going to go on to this side, which we're just going to go in very carefully. Rinse off the brush, same thing, pull out the color carefully, a little more water there, we grab some of that. I'm going to dry the brush and then just pick up some of that excess with the dry brush so that it's not too dark. And then the last part is over here. I'm going to wet brush pull that out. That's good. Rinse off the brush, and then the next thing that we need to focus on is actually mixing the skin tone. Usually what you want to do is you want to get a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, and then just kind of like play around with diluting those two. You can kind of get a decent skin tone. You don't want too much pigment either way, because too much on either direction, it'll just look weird. So it's kind of like a fine balance between the two. On top of that, you could add a little bit of brown. And you get something like that. I usually tend to want to put a little more towards the red if it's a lighter skinned person. So this is a decent looking color. And what you do is you just fill it in. And don't worry about all the details. You just kind of fill that in. And pick up a little bit of that. And then we'll leave it like that. And it will dry dark or lighter. Once it dries, it will be a little lighter. Then the next step, we're just going to get just straight black, just directly from the tube. I'm going to add a little bit of some texture here to the tail. And the mane. Just a little bit like that. Okay, maybe a little more. It's a little too light. There we go. And rinse the brush. And that all looks pretty good. There is one more thing, so let me get some black and mix it up with a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to mix in just a general shadow color. And I'm going to need a lot of water for this because I want it to be transparent. I don't want it to be too pigmented because then it'll be too strong. But this is probably a good mixture. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add shadow to different parts of the painting, starting with the underbelly of the horse. Like that. Like that. A little bit here from the saddle. And I don't want to be going over it too much because I may end up smudging some of the other colors. Like that. Definitely on the inner leg here. Maybe pick up some of it. Here, front of the horse. Underneath the chin, on the neck, a little bit here, a little bit to show the details in the face. And this leg back here. And rinse my brush, dry the brush, maybe pick up some of that excess. Okay, I'm going to step back for a moment. This looks pretty good. Now, I could fiddle around and add some darker tones in the face and maybe a little more details, but when it's such a small space, I tend to just leave it as it is instead of trying to fuss around with it, and then it becomes a mess. And since I like how this looks, I'm going to leave it as it is. If you want to, you can always add some details in the clouds or the background, but I really like the composition with the emphasis on how it is, with the object in the center and then things kind of fading out from it. So we're done with this one. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.